In tonight's Dayline Defense, the National Defense Authorization Bill. The House is working on a plan that could allow for more than $600 billion in Pentagon spending. But where is all that money going? For the answer, we're joined by John Donnelly from Congressional Quarterly, editor of the CQ on Defense blog. John, the current bill sitting in the House is not the same as the version Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel proposed earlier this year. And this House legislation forces the Pentagon to accept weapons it didn't ask for?
That's right, lots of them. You've got Abrams tanks that the Pentagon doesn't want to upgrade. The Congress says you have to upgrade them. The Pentagon wants to retire its old U-2 spy planes. Congress, this committee anyway, the House Armed Services Committee, has said, The Pentagon wants to retire A-10 attack planes. The committee says, got to keep them flying. The list goes on. There's ships that that the Pentagon wants to just lay up and then modernize. The House Armed Services Committee said, no, you can't do that. There's an aircraft carrier that the Pentagon isn't sure whether it will have the money to keep in service, so isn't sure if it's going to spend money to refuel it. The House Armed Services Committee said you must refuel it in order to maintain a certain number of aircraft carriers. And those are just the weapons.
Well, besides the weapons, what kinds of programs will the Pentagon have to pay for against its wishes?
Well, there are a number of personnel items. Like, for example, the committee has reported to the House a bill that would require the Pentagon to spend more on across-the-board pay to pay money at a faster rate than they would like to. They're still proposing a rate of increase, but the committee said it has to be a larger increase than you propose. Ditto for things like the housing allowance or a commissary subsidy. Areas where the Pentagon wanted to save money. Co-pays and deductibles for the amount that military personnel and retirees would spend for their health care. The Pentagon wants to have them spend a little bit more, especially those who can afford it, like working age retirees, in order to reduce the burgeoning cost of personnel. And then another huge one is bases, infrastructure. The Pentagon would like to have another round of base closures in 2017. This committee has said no, and it's likely the other committees will agree.
Help us understand, for folks maybe not familiar with the military or how Capitol Hill works, why does this happen?
Well, well, first of all, I don't want to come across as if everything this committee is recommending is a bad idea, or that they should just rubber stamp the administration's proposal. They should not. That's why we have a Congress instead of just a king. But you have a pattern here of members of Congress doing things that protect their parochial interests, that protect jobs in their districts, that protect the people the companies that contribute to their campaigns. And some of them may be good ideas, but the net effect, they're not all good ideas. And the net effect is a huge bill that the Pentagon has to pay.
Well, how much more money are we talking in extra programs and weapons compared to the original bill?
It's in the scores of billions of dollars over a multi-year period. Let's put it that way. I don't have the exact figure, but let's just take the personnel items, for example. Over a 5-year period, the Pentagon wants to save $31 billion by having people pay a little bit more for health care and get a little bit less in the way of pay raises. That's a pretty huge sum, $31 billion over 5 years. And the weapons, like the A-10, for example, over 5 years, the Pentagon could save $4 billion approximately by retiring those planes. But by being forced to keep them in service, they're not going to be able to save that money. And that means they're going to have to take it from somewhere else.
Well, I think most folks understand from a budget perspective why you want to cut back on some of these expenditures. But from the Pentagon's perspective, why would the Pentagon not want these extras? At the end of the day, what's the harm for them?
Well, in an ideal world, they would probably say yes to most of these things. Why not, as you say? But we don't live in an ideal world, and particularly as the budget situation has gotten tighter, it's become less possible for the military to do that because their budget is capped. And to the degree that they are forced to spend money on something that they want to stop spending money on, they're going to have to take that away from some other part of the budget, something they give more priority to.
Congress adding to the defense budget is nothing new. What's been the effect of this in the past, and could this damage the military in the future?
You're right, it's nothing new, but there are a couple of things that are developing that in the next year or two that are going to make this a bigger problem for the Defense Department. First of all, the caps, the fixed amount of money that the Pentagon has, I don't see that going away. I think that we're going to continue to have a limit on the amount of money you can spend on defense and, for that matter, non-defense programs. So I think that cap will be there. The other thing that's going to go away, maybe not for a few years, but before you know it, is the war budget, which is not capped and which the Pentagon and Congress have used as sort of a safety valve to put billions of dollars that don't have anything to do with the war that they can't fit in the so-called base budget, okay? But that supplementary budget is going to go away soon. And then the final factor that's going to constrain the options of the Pentagon, the final major factor, is base closures, as I mentioned earlier. The fact that they cannot close or reorganize their facilities in a major way limits the options. It means they have to take it out of things like training and take it out of money that they could spend on developing and procuring new weapons that they do need. So all of this boxes them in.
Well, it's a fascinating debate, and it's a topic we'll follow for the next several months as this legislation moves forward. Congressional Quarterly's John Donnelly, editor of the CQ on Defense blog. John, thank you.
Thank you.